In the endless black of space, silence ruled. Stars shone like distant fires, but there was no sound, no movement, only the vast stillness of the galaxy. Ships belonging to the alien warlords drifted across the sector, their metal bodies glowing. Faintly under starlight, the alien commander sat in his chair, tall and armored, his 4 eyes glowing cold blue. Around him, officers watched screens filled with static. Nothing moved, no enemy, no threat. Pathetic humans, the commander hissed, his voice sharp like metal scraping stone. They are broken, they hide, they are finished. The crew laughed. One officer, a younger alien with smaller tusks, forced a smile but kept looking at his console. Something was not right. For hours, his scanner showed faint signals, small pulses of energy that disappeared too quickly, too clean. Too sharp, Commander, he said slowly, his claws trembling on the screen. There are echoes in the dark, shapes maybe. Signals that vanish before I can trace them. The commander leaned forward, annoyed. Ghosts, dust, do not waste my time. But sir, the officer pressed, his voice lower now, they move like ships, but too fast. Faster than anything I've seen. The commander waved his hand. Impossible. Earth has no fleet. Their world burned. Their armies scattered. Their silence is proof. Silence. The word echoed across the bridge. Silence meant safety, or so they believed. But the young officer's chest grew tight. He could not shake the feeling that something waited in the void, watching. The other crew. Members ignored him. They joked about the weakness of humans, about how easily Earth had fallen. Some even mocked the idea that humans were ever warriors at all. Fragile bones, weak lungs, their planets were easy to take. If not for their noise, we might have forgotten them sooner, an officer sneered. Laughter filled the chamber. But outside, beyond the glass windows, the stars shifted. At first, it looked like nothing more than a shadow passing across the void. But shadows in space do not move. The young officer gasped. His screen blinked red for a second, then went black. Again, there, he shouted, his voice cracking. Something is out there. The commander rose from his seat, his heavy frame towering. Show me. The officer tapped controls, but the signal was gone. His claws scraped against the console in frustration. It was there, I swear it. Big, massive, the commander slammed a fist on the armrest. Enough. Your fear insults me. Still, unease rippled through the crew. Some turned to look out the wide viewport, staring into the black sea of stars. Why is it so quiet? One muttered under his breath. Too quiet. The silence pressed heavier, like a weight on their chests. Even machines seemed to hum lower, as if the entire ship was holding its breath. The young officer whispered, almost to himself. What if they are not gone? What if the silence is not weakness? But waiting? The commander's eyes flashed. You dare suggest the humans? He stopped. His words froze. Every screen on the bridge flickered. Static. Then, a single shape appeared. Dark silhouette dot, it was enormous. A ship, no something larger, sharper, deadlier than anything the aliens had faced. Its surface was covered in strange metal plating, jagged like a predator's teeth. The bridge went silent. No one laughed now. The officer's claws shook. That is not possible. Impossible, the commander growled, but his voice lacked certainty. As they watched, the shadow moved, slow but deliberate. Lights flared across its hull, blue and white, burning like the eyes of a beast awakening. Commander, another officer whispered, it's human. The words hit like thunder. Human. The crew froze. The commander's lips curled back, his fangs bared. No, it cannot be. But before he could deny it again, the massive vessel lit up fully. A symbol appeared across its hull, an old flag. Of Earth, bright against the darkness. The humans were not gone. They were here, The young officer's heart pounded. He whispered the truth no one wanted to say. The silence was a trap. A deep vibration rolled through the alien ship. Something outside was powering up. Weapons, engines. The humans had been waiting, hiding in the silence, building something far stronger than anyone imagined. "Commander!" a voice cried. Energy spike from the human ship. "Shields up!" The commander roared, but his voice was drowned by the blaring alarms. On the screen, the human vessel glowed brighter. A beam of energy gathered at its core. Growing into a blinding storm dot, the young officer clutched his console, his breath shaking. "They were never weak," he whispered. "They were silent because they were ready." The commander's final order was lost in the explosion of light. From the void, the first strike came, and the silence ended. The alien fleet drifted in uneasy silence. The first human strike had shaken them all. One cruiser had vanished in a storm of white fire, leaving only burning fragments spinning into the dark. What they thought was an empty void was now full of danger, full of shadows they could not see. On the bridge of the alien flagship, the commander stood tall, his armored body glowing under red emergency lights. His voice was cold, but there was a faint tremor inside it. "Find them," he ordered. "Every scanner, every drone. I want the location of those human ghosts." The crew scrambled, claws tapping on glowing screens. Signals flickered, but nothing. "Stayed long enough to track. They disappear," one officer muttered. "Every time I lock on, they vanish." Another added, "It's like chasing smoke." The young officer from before, the one who had warned them, leaned closer to his console. His hands shook, but his eyes were sharp. "No," he whispered. "Not smoke, hunters." The commander's gaze snapped toward him. "Speak clearly." "They are moving between shadows," the officer said. His voice rose, growing stronger. "These are not broken survivors. They are stalking us." The bridge fell silent. For the first time, no one dared to laugh. A low sound echoed through the ship's hull. A vibration. At first, it seemed like a trick of nerves. But then the vibration grew, deep, rhythmic, as if something massive was circling them. The commander gripped his chair. "Report." One officer turned pale. "Sir, it feels like engines. Big ones." The young officer stared at his screen, wide-eyed. "They're around us." Suddenly, alarms screamed. A flash tore through the void, and another alien cruiser lit up like a dying star, breaking apart piece by piece. The bridge shook with the force of the shockwave. "Shields!" The commander bellowed, but before they could react, the shadow was gone again, vanished. What was that? An officer cried. "A predator," the young officer whispered. "They strike, then vanish back into the void," the commander snarled. "You call humans predators, they are prey." The young officer turned, his eyes burning. Prey does not burn fleets with a single shot. The crew froze. For the first time, the words hit them with full weight. The humans were not running. They were not weak. They were controlling the battlefield, one shadow at a time. More signals blinked across the scanners. 1, then 3, then 10. Ships. Or at least shadows of ships. Every time the crew tried to target them, the signals melted into static. "They're everywhere." A panicked voice shouted. "No," the young officer said, his voice low. "They want us to think they are everywhere. They are playing with us." A cold sweat spread through the alien crew. They were warriors, bred for conquest, but fear was spreading faster than orders. "Commander," one officer stammered, "we must retreat. We cannot fight what we cannot see." The commander's fangs bared in rage. "Retreat? Against humans? You would shame the Empire." His anger filled the room, but the silence outside spoke louder. The void seemed alive now, a living thing. With shadows for claws, the lights flickered. For a heartbeat, the viewport showed nothing but black. Then movement. A shape, huge and sharp, gliding past like a phantom. There! Someone screamed, pointing. On the starboard side. Weapons fired, beams of energy lancing into the dark. They struck nothing. The shape melted away like fog under sunlight. They're taunting us, the young officer said through clenched teeth. Another cruiser exploded. Fire bloomed across the void, and fragments of metal slammed against the flagship shields. The shockwave rattled the bridge, throwing officers to the ground. The commander roared, his voice desperate now. "Where is their fleet? Show me!" The young officer stared at his console, then slowly lifted his head. His voice trembled. "Their fleet is already here." Gasps filled the room. One by one, shadows revealed themselves across the horizon. At first, it was only a few. Then dozens. Then hundreds. Dark ships slid out of the void, their metal bodies glinting with pale light. Each carried the mark of Earth, glowing on its hull. They had been hidden, cloaked by silence, waiting for the perfect moment. The commander's face hardened. For a moment, even he looked afraid. "This is not possible," he muttered. "Humans cannot build this." They were broken. The young officer's gaze never left the screen. They were broken. So they rebuilt, stronger. A voice suddenly filled the ship. Not alien, human, calm, cold. It came through every channel, every speaker. "Your time is over. You thought silence meant weakness. You were wrong." The crew froze, eyes wide. The human voice was steady, almost emotionless, but heavy with power. "You invaded our world. You mocked our fall, but we learned from the dark. We became shadows in the void." And now, the voice paused, its final words cutting like a blade. "Now the void belongs to us." The communication ended, leaving only silence. But this silence was no comfort. It was a warning. The alien crew looked at their commander, waiting for orders. For the first time, he had none. The young officer leaned back in his chair, his voice quiet, almost broken. "We are not hunting them. They are hunting us." Outside, the human fleet spread like a storm, their lights glowing against the darkness. Shadows had moved, and now they were ready to strike. The void was no longer empty. The alien fleet floated in broken formation, fear crawling through every ship. Fire from the last destroyed cruiser still burned, glowing like a dying star. The silence that followed was worse than the explosions. It was heavy, crushing, as if the void itself was waiting for something more. On the bridge of the alien flagship, the commander stood like a statue, claws digging into the metal armrests of his chair. His officers kept their eyes on their screens, afraid to meet his gaze. Every console flickered with static. Signals appeared, vanished, then returned in places they should not be. "Show me where they are." The commander growled. "We cannot." "Sir," one officer whispered, "they appear and vanish, as if the void itself hides them." Another added, voice shaking, "They are not running. They are circling us." The commander's jaw tightened. "They are humans. They cannot outmatch US." But even he did not believe his own words. The last strike had been too precise, too fast. The young officer who had spoken before looked up from his screen, his voice trembling but steady. "They are hunting us, one by one." Before the commander could reply, alarms screamed across the bridge. Lights flashed red, and the sound of warning klaxons filled the air. "Contact!" An officer shouted. "Something massive dead ahead." Everyone turned to the VIEWPORT. From the shadows, a colossal shape emerged. Slowly, like a predator revealing itself, the vessel glided into view. It was unlike anything the aliens had seen. Vast, jagged, covered in armored plating that seemed to drink in the starlight. Its surface glowed with lines of blue fire, pulsing like veins. Gasps filled the bridge. One officer whispered, That is not possible." "It's human," another breathed. The commander's fists clenched. "Impossible." They never had this power. The young officer stared, his eyes wide. They do now. The human ship stopped in the dark, facing the alien flagship directly. It was silent, unmoving, like a giant waiting for the perfect moment. Then lights flared across its hull. Dozens of turrets rotated into position. Energy gathered at its core, glowing brighter and brighter until the bridge was bathed in white light. "Raise shields!" The commander roared. Shields flared across the alien flagship, a shimmering wall of energy. But even the strongest shield was nothing compared to what came next. A beam of white fire erupted from the human vessel. It was not a simple weapon, it was a storm compressed into a single strike. The beam tore through the void, hitting one of the alien cruisers before it could escape. The ship exploded instantly. Not piece by piece, not slowly, instantly. One moment it was there, the next it was scattered into ash and fire. The bridge shook with the shockwave. Officers were thrown to the ground. Sparks rained from consoles. They destroyed it. In one shot, an officer gasped, struggling to stand. The commander's eyes burned with rage, but deep inside, fear twisted his gut. Another officer shouted, "More signals!" All around us, the void lit up. One by one, massive human warships decloaked, their dark shapes appearing like ghosts out of the black. Each carried the same glowing lines of energy, each bristling with weapons. There were not just one or two. There were dozens, hundreds. The aliens watched in horror as the largest human fleet they had ever seen revealed itself. The young officer's voice cracked. This is the galaxy's mightiest fleet." The commander roared, trying to crush the fear spreading among his crew. "Fire! All ships, fire at will!" Alien weapons lit up the void, beams of green and red slashing toward the human ships. But the humans moved with terrifying precision. They shifted as one, shields absorbing or dodging the attacks. Then, in perfect coordination, they struck back. Blinding light erupted across space. One alien ship exploded. Then another, and another. On the bridge, chaos reigned. Officers shouted over one another, trying to track targets, trying to hold formation, trying to survive. But their voices were drowned out by the thunder of destruction outside. The young officer gripped his console, whispering to himself, "They waited for this. All those years of silence. They were building this fleet. Shut your mouth." The commander roared, but even he was shaking. The human flagship's voice filled the channel again. "Calm, cold. You should have left us in peace. Now you face the price." The commander slammed his claws on the console. "They dare threaten us? We are the Empire. We will." Before he could finish, another beam of fire shot from the human ship, tearing through a battleship on their flank. The explosion shook them all. The commander's rage faltered. He looked around at his bridge, at the faces of his crew, and saw only fear. The young officer's voice cut through the chaos. "This is not a battle. This is an execution." The words struck the crew like ice. Another explosion lit the void. The alien fleet, once proud and invincible, was falling apart before their eyes. The commander sank into his chair, claws trembling. He had led fleets across the stars, crushed worlds under his banner, but in this moment, he understood the truth. Humans had not been silent because they were broken. They had been silent because they were preparing, and now, they were striking with power the galaxy had never seen. The young officer looked at the viewport, watching another human ship glide past like a shadow with teeth. His voice was soft, but it carried through the bridge. "The silence is over." The bridge went dark as another blast shook the flagship, and the void was filled with fire. The void burned with light. Alien ships died one after another, their wrecks drifting like broken bones through the dark. Fire spread across the battlefield, but in the center of it all, the human fleet moved like a single machine. On the bridge of the alien flagship, silence gripped the crew. Their eyes were wide, their hands trembling over consoles. For the first time in living memory, fear ruled them. The commander stood, his massive form casting a shadow across the room. His voice was hard, but the edge of doubt cut through it. "Report," he demanded. An officer turned, pale and shaking. "Sir, more of them. So many more. They're appearing everywhere." Another officer whispered, "It's not just one fleet. It's an armada." The young officer at the far console stared at his screen. His claws tapped nervously as dozens of signals filled his display. His throat felt dry as he spoke. "They've been hiding in the dark, all this time, waiting." The commander snarled. "That is impossible. Humans could never build this." "Look outside," the young officer said quietly. The commander turned toward the viewport. His eyes widened. One by one, massive ships slid out of the void. Dark hulls glinted with faint blue light. Long, jagged forms stretched across the stars. Some were colossal battleships, the size of small cities, their surfaces bristling with weapons. Others were fast and sleek, hunters gliding like wolves through the shadows. Each ship bore the same mark, Earth's old flag, painted bright and proud across the steel. Gasps filled the bridge. "There are hundreds," one officer stammered. "No," the young officer whispered. "Thousands." The commander gripped the railing tightly, his claws digging into the metal. His eyes darted from one ship to the next, but there were too many. Far too many. "They cannot have built this," he growled, almost to himself. "They had nothing left. Their world was ash." "Then they built from ash," the young officer replied. The commander snapped toward him. "Silence." But the words rang hollow. Every officer could see the truth outside. The silence of the humans had not been weakness. It had been patience. Across the stars, the human fleet spread out, filling every corner of the void. Their ships moved with perfect coordination, forming lines, circles, walls of steel. It was not chaos, it was discipline. It was designed. Suddenly, a voice came over the comms. It was human. Calm, deep. "This is Admiral of the Terran Fleet. To the invaders, you thought Earth was gone. You thought silence meant defeat, but silence was our weapon. We are here now. We are many." The words echoed across every alien ship. The commander's lips curled into a snarl. "Open fire. All ships attack now." Green beams lit the darkness. As the alien fleet fired, dozens of warships launched their strongest weapons at once. Explosions flashed across the void, striking the human formation. But when the light faded, the human fleet still stood. Shields glowed faintly, absorbing the blows. A few ships shifted position, but none fell. The commander's fury turned to dread. "No, it cannot be." The young officer whispered, "They are stronger than us." Then the humans fired. From hundreds of ships, energy storms erupted. Blinding white beams cut through the dark, tearing into alien vessels. Cruisers broke apart in seconds. Battleships cracked open like eggs. The screams of crews filled the comms, cut short by fire and silence. On the bridge, the aliens watched in horror as their proud fleet was torn apart. "They're cutting through us." One officer shouted, "We cannot hold." Another cried out, "They block every escape route. We're trapped." The commander slammed his fist against the console. "Fight. We are the Empire. We do not run from prey." The young officer stood slowly, his voice calm but grim. "We are not fighting prey. We are standing against predators." The commander turned, fury burning in his eyes. But before he could respond, the ship shook violently. A blast had struck their side, sending officers sprawling to the floor. Sparks flew from broken consoles. The smell of smoke filled the air. Shields failing. Someone shouted. The commander rose, unsteady but still defiant. He looked to the viewport and saw a human ship approaching. It was larger than the rest, its hull glowing with lines of blue fire. The Cums came alive again. You invaded our skies. You burned our cities. You thought silence meant death. But silence meant preparation. The human voice paused. When it spoke again, it was sharper, colder. Now the galaxy will remember who we are. The commander's claws trembled. His mouth opened, but no words came. For the first time, he felt something he had never known. Not anger, not power. Fear. The young officer lowered his gaze, whispering, "The galaxy will remember, and so will we." Outside, the human fleet advanced. Thousands of ships moved as one, a storm of fire and steel. Alien ships tried to scatter, but every path was blocked. The humans had them surrounded. One final order came over the human Cums: strike. And the void lit up with endless fire. The alien flagship shook, alarms screaming, systems dying one after another. The crew clung to their stations, knowing it was over. The commander stared into the void, his pride shattered, his empire crumbling before his eyes. The young officer whispered the truth that no one else dared to speak. They waited in silence, so they could roar like this. The flagship groaned as explosions tore through its hull. The bridge shook, sparks rained, and then darkness. Outside, the human fleet moved forward, unstoppable. The galaxy's mightiest fleet had revealed itself, and nothing would ever be the same. The battlefield was fire and wreckage. Alien ships burned across the stars, their hulks drifting silently into the endless dark. What had begun as a proud fleet was now a scattering of survivors, each one desperate, each one afraid. Of the alien flagship, the commander stared at the destruction with wide, furious eyes. His claws dug into the railing, metal bending under his grip. His crew worked frantically, their voices filled with panic. "They surround us," one officer cried. "They block every channel." Another shouted, "We cannot send for help." The commander roared over the noise, "Silence! Hold your stations!" But even his voice no longer carried the same weight. Fear had already seeped into every corner of the ship. The officers were warriors, raised to fight without mercy, but what they saw outside was something no training had prepared them for. The young officer at the far console watched quietly, his heart pounding. His screen showed hundreds of human ships closing in. They moved in perfect formations, cutting off every escape, every chance of survival. "They are not fighting us," he said softly. "They are breaking us." Several heads turned toward him, eyes wide. His words carried the truth everyone felt, but no one wanted to say. The commander snapped toward him, rage flashing. "You dare speak like that? They are nothing." "They are." He stopped. A voice came through the Cums, calm, steady, human. "This is the Terran fleet. To those who invaded our world, surrender now. There is no escape. We have returned." The bridge went silent. The alien officers looked at one another, their faces pale. Some reached for their consoles, others froze in fear. The commander's claws trembled. One officer broke the silence. His voice cracked. "Commander, what do we do?" The commander growled, forcing strength into his voice. "We fight until the last ship. We will not bow to prey." But his words no longer inspired. Another officer whispered, "Prey does not command fleets like this." A murmur spread through the crew. For the first time, doubt was louder than loyalty. The young officer looked down, then lifted his gaze slowly. "They warned us. They told us silence was not weakness. We did not listen." The commander slammed his fist on the console, sparks flying. "Enough! I will not hear this." But before he could continue, another blast shook the ship. A cruiser on their left flank exploded, debris scattering across the flagship shields. The lights flickered. The bridge tilted, throwing officers from their stations. "They are closing in tighter." An officer shouted, "We cannot break through." Another voice cried, Some ships are already retreating. The commander froze. Retreating? Yes, the officer said, panic in his voice. They are fleeing the battle. They ignore your orders. The young officer spoke again, louder now. They are afraid. We all are. Fear breaks the fleet before fire does. The commander turned on him, eyes blazing. You dare! But his words died as a new transmission filled the bridge dot. It was human again. Stronger this time, you came. With arrogance, you believed humans were weak. But we are still here. We are not prey. We are hunters. And this galaxy will never forget it. The voice cut out. Silence returned. The crew shifted uneasily. The commander's breathing grew heavy. He wanted to shout, to force them to fight, but the weight of fear pressed harder than his words ever could. Another explosion rocked the ship. Another cruiser gone. An officer broke down, his voice trembling. We cannot win this. Commander, we must surrender. Gasps filled the bridge. Surrender. The word itself was poisoned. The commander bared his fangs. Never! He roared, but the young officer stepped forward, his voice firm despite the fear in his chest. If we do not surrender, we will die. All of us. Look outside, Commander. Look at them. The commander turned. Through the viewport, the human fleet stretched across the stars, endless lines of steel and fire. Their formation was perfect, unbreakable. Every path forward led only into their guns. The young officer's voice was quiet, but every word struck. Deep. The silence is broken. The humans have returned. If we do not bow now, none of us will live to see tomorrow. The commander's claws shook. His pride screamed at him to fight, to resist. But his eyes showed him the truth. More alien ships fled, scattering in every direction. Some were destroyed instantly, cut down by the humans as they tried to escape. Others vanished into the distance, their fear stronger than loyalty. The commander watched his mighty fleet collapse. Not from human fire alone, but from fear. He sank slowly into his chair, his voice heavy, almost broken. Fear has already defeated us. The young officer lowered his head, and the humans know it. Outside, the human fleet held position, weapons ready, but they did not rush. They did not need to. They had already won. The bridge was filled with silence now. No one spoke. No one dared. The alien commander sat in his chair, claws gripping the armrest so tightly that cracks spread across the metal. His breath came slow and heavy, like a predator who knew thee. Hunt had turned against him. Across the dark void outside, the human fleet stood unshaken. Thousands of ships stretched in lines so perfect, they seemed carved into the stars. Every barrel pointed toward the flagship. Every shadow reminded the aliens that they were prey now. Commander, one officer whispered, breaking the silence. At last, what are your orders? The commander's eyes burned, but his voice was low. Orders? He almost laughed, but the sound was hollow. Look outside. Tell me what orders matter now. The young officer at the far console stood. Straighter. His voice was steady, though inside he felt the same fear as everyone else. The humans wait. They want us to decide. Fight and die, or surrender. A second officer growled, his scales shifting in shame. We cannot surrender. Our kind will never forgive us. Our ancestors will curse us. The young officer turned on him sharply. And if we fight? Who will remember us? Dust in the stars leaves no legacy. The words struck deep. The crew shifted uneasily. Some lowered their eyes, unable to argue. Others clenched their jaws, still holding on to pride. The commander rose slowly. His shadow stretched across the deck. His voice rumbled with fury. You speak of surrender as if it is honor. But it is not. It is death of the spirit. Better the body burn than the spirit be broken. The bridge shook as another explosion lit the void. A surviving alien destroyer was torn apart, its screams of metal echoing through the COMMS. An officer shouted, Another ship gone. They don't even move, Commander. They wait, and still we die. The commander's eyes narrowed. That is their weapon, fear. Yes, the young officer said softly, and it is sharper than their guns. The words hung in the air. No one dared answer them. The comms crackled suddenly, cutting through the tension. A human voice again. Calm and strong. This is your final chance. Lower your shields. Power down your weapons. Surrender, and you will live. Resist, and none of you will remain. Every alien on the bridge froze. The voice was steady, but it was not cruel. It did not mock. It carried the weight of truth, and that truth pressed harder than fire. An older officer trembled at his station. Commander, they give us a choice. The commander's claws twitched. Choice? No, this is a leash. A chain. They wish to parade us as slaves. The young officer's voice rose, louder than before. And if we refuse, we die. Which chain is heavier, Commander, the chain of shame or the silence of the grave? The commander snapped his gaze toward him, ready to roar, but then stopped. His crew was watching. Their eyes no longer burned with rage. They burned with fear. Fear of him, perhaps, but more so fear of the humans. He saw the truth in them. His power was slipping. His command was gone. Another officer whispered, some of the fleet has already surrendered. Their signals are clear. The humans did not destroy them. The commander growled, but his voice cracked. And you would trust prey to honor mercy? The young officer met his eyes. Prey does not build fleets like that. Prey does not win wars without firing every gun. They are not prey. They are something else. Silence. The commander looked out again. For the first time, his shoulders lowered. His great frame seemed smaller. They waited in silence all these years, he said softly. We mistook it for weakness. Now their silence was the forge of their blade. A sudden alarm cut through the bridge. Another alien vessel had broken. Ranks charging toward the humans in a desperate suicide run. The crew watched the screen in dread. The vessel never reached them. Human guns flared once, and the ship was gone, scattered into nothing. The young officer whispered, that will be us, if we choose wrongly. The crew turned back to the commander. All eyes were on him now, not with loyalty, with expectation, with desperate hope that he would not lead them into death. The commander's claws loosened from the chair. His voice was quiet, broken but clear. Signal the fleet. Tell them to stand down. Gasps filled the room. Some officers lowered their heads in relief. Others clenched their fists in shame. The young officer bowed slightly. Yes, Commander. As the orders spread, one by one, alien ships powered down. Shields dropped. Weapons went dark. Across the stars, the once proud fleet dimmed into silence. The human voice returned, steady as stone. Your surrender is received. Hold position. Any betrayal will be met with fire. Comply, and you will live. The crew sat in silence, the weight of defeat pressing heavier than any weapon. The commander slumped into his chair, staring at nothing. So it ends. Not with fire, but with fear. The young officer looked at him. Not the end, Commander. Only the beginning. The humans will not stop here. The words chilled the crew more than any explosion. They all knew he was right. The void was quiet now, but it was not peaceful. Alien ships floated in formation, engines dimmed, weapons cold. The fires of battle had faded, leaving only the aftermath of silence. Outside, the human fleet glowed softly against the darkness. 1,000 points of light that reminded everyone who now held power. On the bridge of the alien flagship, the commander sat in his chair, motionless. His claws rested lightly on the armrests, but his mind raced. He had survived countless wars, crushed worlds, and commanded fleets across the galaxy. But this was different. Fear had broken him, shattered the pride of his people. The young officer stood at his console, eyes scanning the void. "Commander," he said cautiously, "they're holding formation, waiting for instructions. They could strike again at any moment." The commander's gaze did not leave the viewport. "And yet they do not. Why?" "Because they already won," the officer said. "We surrendered. They do not need to attack." The commander closed his eyes briefly. A weapon is not always fired to kill. Sometimes it is fired to teach. The bridge was silent except for the faint hum of the engines. Officers shifted nervously, unwilling to speak. Outside, the human fleet remained still, watching, calculating. Then the comms crackled. A human voice, calm and measured, filled the bridge. "Your surrender has been accepted. All systems will be inspected. Compliance is required. Resist, and your ships will be destroyed." One officer swallowed hard. "Commander, they will board us. They will take everything." The commander's eyes narrowed. "And if they do? What can we do?" The young officer's voice was quiet but firm. "We survive, that is all. We obey, we learn. They have returned stronger than we imagined. We have no choice." Another officer muttered, "They won't stop here. Once they have taken us, they will move into the rest of the galaxy." "Yes," the young officer said. "And if we survive this, we might see another day. If not, then everything ends here." The commander's claws clenched tightly. "And what of honor? What of pride? Must we surrender both to live?" The young officer's eyes met his. "Honor is meaningless if no one is left to remember it." A long pause filled the bridge. Outside, a small human vessel detached from the fleet and glided toward the flagship. Its hull gleamed in the starlight. The crew held their breath as it approached, docking clamps ready to connect. The commander spoke softly. "Prepare for boarding. Show them no aggression." "We survive." The young officer nodded. "All weapons down?" "All weapons down," the commander said. The human vessel docked silently. The airlock cycled with a hiss. Through the viewport, shadows moved, then figures appeared. Tall, upright, armored, human. Not threatening yet, but every step they took carried power and confidence. A human officer appeared in the bridge doorway. Voice calm and commanding. "We come in peace. No harm will be done if you comply." The aliens watched in tense silence. Some officers shifted, unsure whether to flee or fight. Others clutched consoles, trembling. The human officer continued. "You fought well. Many would have destroyed themselves completely rather than surrender. You have made the right choice." The commander, still seated, finally spoke. "We did what we had to. Survival is not weakness." "No," the human said. "It is wisdom. But know this, the galaxy has changed. Humanity will no longer hide in silence. We will protect our worlds, and all who threaten peace will face the consequences." A hush fell over the bridge. The human officer's words were not a threat. They were a promise. The young officer looked at the commander. "This is the new order." "Yes," the commander said quietly. "And we must adapt, or perish." Outside, the rest of the alien fleet powered down fully, their surrender complete. The human ships began moving again, circling the captured vessels, inspecting systems, ensuring compliance. The once feared alien empire had been humbled not by fire alone, but by strategy, patience, and silence turned into power. A junior officer spoke softly. "Will they forgive us?" The young officer shook his head. "Not forgive, but they will let us live, and that is enough for now." The commander rose slowly, looking across his bridge. His pride was gone, but his mind sharpened. "Let them see that we can learn. Let them see that even the proud can rise again, differently." The human officer looked toward him. "We are watching. The galaxy is watching. Make no mistake, your actions here will be remembered." The boarding human vessel moved to the center of the bridge, and alien officers stepped aside. Humans examined consoles, assessed the crew, but did not attack. Every action was precise, controlled, and measured. The commander turned to his crew. "Remember this moment. Fear can break empires. Silence can build them. Learn from both." The young officer nodded. They waited in shadows, and now they move like a storm. "We survived because we surrendered, not because we fought." Final pause filled the room. The void outside seemed to stretch forever, quiet but alive. The human fleet held its positions, ready to strike again if needed, but for now, it waited. A galaxy had changed its balance of power in silence, and the aliens knew that nothing would ever be the same. The commander exhaled slowly. "The galaxy has learned a new lesson today, and so have we." The young officer whispered, almost to himself, "The silence is over, and it will never return." Outside, the stars gleamed. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, their lights bright. Against the black void, a new era had begun, one forged in patience, silence, and the quiet strength of those who refused to be defeated. And for the alien fleet, the lesson was clear: survive, adapt, and remember. The humans had returned. And now, the universe would never forget.